natural born comedian. Now, some people don't get famous until later in life or at a certain point. They peak and then drop off, and sometimes they never do. But if you don't work hard, you're probably never going to see the light of day. Now, if you actually have talent, and talents can be different things too. It can be more of a community thing. You're at the comedy clubs. You're doing this. You're doing that. You're doing the footwork. My lazy ass, I just sit on the fucking computer all day and do fucking, improv and shit. But maybe I should move on. I have reasons to live where I live, and there's not very much stand up here. But I can't move. It's not a good time to move. You have the pandemic and stuff. So I don't do stand up comedy, but I can. And if I was grinding on it, I have to live in a good area to do it. And I don't. Honestly, I'm not used to big cities. I don't feel very safe in big cities, and big cities can be pretty expensive. So, I'd have to find an area where I could be safe and I wouldn't be living in a hood or something, because I wouldn't want to be living in a hood. But, you might be safe, depending. I'm just I'm a pretty chill guy. But anyways, natural born comedian. Some of us are born with the comedy gene. You're born with the funny gene. You're just fucking funny, man. And, they say, I've heard this several times where they say, oh, yeah, that guy's hilarious. He should do comedy. And then he does the comedy and he's just terrible. And those guys that are hilarious and then do comedy and they're bad, they just, it's just different when you're on a stage or you do it in a video. It's a lot different, because there's a lot of people that are going to see you. You're conscious of that. It takes a long time to be good at that. You can't, doing shit with your friends is a lot different. If you make your friends laugh, and that's the thing is like me. I just always had the floor. I was always making jokes. I was always able to make jokes. And I never really thought of myself as a fucking comedian. I never thought I was that funny, really. Like, I never thought that. I never was like, oh, dude, I'm really fucking hilarious. I'm so funny. But I think people change too, and like whenever a person gets in their 30s, they can be a lot different than their 20s or their teen years. And that's why you see, like, depending, even music, depending on, there's certain things to that too. And I see, a lot of the time it's like, I guess if you want to talk about rap, I think there's a lot of realness to that. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. Fake rappers, real ones, real comedians, and fake ones. I think some people can be fake comedians in the same sense. And if you make that analogy, and it's weird too, because a lot of people don't even like metal, or they don't even like rap, or they don't even like this, they don't even like that. So if that's all you do, you might not be able to appeal to other people. And that's just as simple as, and it takes work to do other things. But, like for me, if I go and rap or if I go draw stuff or I do this or that, I'm just not going to be as good. I've always just been a really good comedian, man. And so for the internet to open it up like it has with YouTube shorts and all that, that's a miracle for me to get watched. Now, I might post a lot of videos and I don't go viral because, and they say, oh, the people's champion, because, sometimes you're really good. Just the people just don't choose you. Especially if you step out of line or you do something that they just don't, they just don't feel it. They don't feel it. Because a lot of the time, only a certain percentage of this human race is really paying attention to you anyways. And, on the other side, though, they pay attention to what they want to. They're busy in their lives, so I wouldn't say they don't care. But, it's like I look at a lot of it and I'm like, a lot of it's kind of dumb. It's kind of stupid because I feel like you're just trying to satisfy everybody on all these fronts and all this shit. And it's just like, it just seems like it's kind of dumb. Like, oh, I want to be legendary. I want to have this legacy, this and that. And it's like a fantasy, really, because there's so many people in the world and there's so many people that are popular at different times. And a lot of people probably aren't even really paying attention to shit. Like, if you can make something funny, they'll watch it. But, we're like, human being, like, things are only relevant to people, like, and you could say they're stupid and they only pay attention to certain things, or, they just, they have shit going on. So, they probably are good people or they care, about other people, but they're just busy in their lives. But then again, a lot of people are crazy and they're pieces of shit. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of irrelevant to say that people don't care or, I don't know. I was just thinking about this whole thing, getting discovered and all this shit. But, anyways, being a natural born comedian, sometimes a person just isn't a natural born comedian and you know, they're, they just try really hard, or they're more of an actor, or, they're not really like a funny person really, but they can like fake it really, really well. And the thing about that is, if you are a natural comedian, you might not be able to carve yourself out really, really well. So if you're like a really funny person and it depends on the situation, you might just not be you might just not be that inspired. Like, hey, I'm really funny, but I'm not really trying to take this to that level, because a lot of people don't. They're really funny. They're just not those kind of comedians, and they wouldn't even probably call themselves a comedian. And that's a lot to take on too, to even call yourself a comedian. That's a high profile right there. And, take that on. I started to take it. I didn't think of myself as a comedian, but I started calling myself one because I felt like it would piss people off, or they'd be like, oh, you're not a comedian. But I just felt like I would just establish that sort of, thing, like, hey, I'm a fucking comedian, fuck you. Like, who cares? It's just a fucking word. But that's what I'm saying, is people can just take that and do that. And you have to have a little bit of confidence, and you have to be a little brave to like call yourself that. Because when you get on the stage, if you're doing stand-up, I don't really do stand-up. I do internet shit. I like doing cartoons and shit. And that's completely fucking fine, dude. There's a lot of people that do stand-up. There's a lot of people who do cartoons. They can be a lot different. But I don't, some it really depends. Sometimes all people do are cartoons. Sometimes all they do are stand-up. Sometimes they dabble in both. Sometimes they do acting, and these are all different fucking things. These are all different. I like to do it all because I just like, hey, I don't really give a fuck what anyone thinks. I'm just going to do some shit and put it online. And, I think that might be the natural comedian in me, because I'm like, it sounds like a bunch of bullshit, to be honest. Like, I think it's a bunch of bullshit. Like, oh, yeah, natural born comedian, right? But, you could look at anyone and you could be like, oh, yeah, which one of these people actually have the funny gene, Because there is a funny gene. There is something that makes people smarter. There is something that makes people better at certain things. Like some people are just born with the body. But if they don't train that body, because it can take a lot of work, like being an NBA star or something, or like a professional athlete, that takes a lot. And if you don't have the right body and you don't have the right routine and all that shit, you're just not, you know what I'm saying? It could take everything you have to spend like every waking minute, and a lot of those people that accomplish a lot in their lives, they spend every waking minute achieving that goal. And some people just don't realize how far people fucking take it. And and that's what I'm saying. Some people are lazy. They don't work hard enough. And then you're just not a natural born comedian. And for me, you can just see it when you look at them, I think, a lot of the time. But sometimes you don't know how they're going to change in their lifespan, because your intelligence will change. And so it's weird, because like if you're a natural, you might go through different phases, but it depends on how much of a natural you are. And I know that there's some industry terms, and there is actually a way of breaking down talent. And I should probably do some more research on it and look up some shit, because it's kind of interesting. But some people could look at you, and because you always hear the stories of people, they look at this person, and they're like, this person is, they're not going to make it, or they think, wow, this, yeah, right. They're just naysayers, like, yeah, right. They're not, and they end up just fucking changing it, turning it around. Some people don't want to do, and they really go through different things too. I mean, because you have a lot of things that happen in life, drug addictions, love, things with your family, health. People have health problems sometimes. They don't talk about it. Sometimes you don't hear everything that happened, man. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Did they get like AIDS or something and they fucking, you don't know what happened to a person. Maybe they got cancer and it changed them, or maybe they just didn't want to be that type of person, because I think some people, they live their lives and they do things, and then they find out, they're like, hey, I just don't care anymore. I just don't even want to do that, because you can kind of get brainwashed too, into pursuing something. Because a lot of people, like, I don't want to say brainwashed, but you get inspired and you don't take it all the way, is what I'm trying to say. And sometimes you're natural and sometimes you're not. And sometimes you could probably take it all the way either way if you really, really, really wanted to. But not everybody really wants to, and not everybody's so inspired, and not everybody has the right routine. It can take forever. But if you're a natural and you work really hard, and you might have to put in every single second, and that's what's going to show, and people will notice it. Because whenever you look at the fucking person, you just start laughing, or like, they might have different things that they do, and sometimes they're in, I'm saying, that's what I was saying before, like, they're in their prime, or they're in different stages. So you have to stand by with some people, because sometimes their personality is just so, like, holy shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can see it. And that's what I see in me. I see that I have this natural gift, and I wasn't able to see it for a long time, and I wasn't able to recognize it, and I almost died a couple different times in my life. I've been through a lot of things, not to go on about that. And but I believe that I am a natural born comedian, and it doesn't really matter what anybody says, because I'm just always going to be a fucking funny person. And there are times when obviously I got to a point where I started to really work hard towards it. But before I wasn't, and I could make people just laugh really hard. And I wasn't ever trying to be a professional. I just wasn't. That wasn't what I did. When I was 16, I had a guitar, okay? I used to play guitar. I used to make beats. I wanted to be an electronic artist. I wanted to be a singer in a band, And then later on, I wanted to be a fucking poet. I wanted to be the modern, I want to be like the extreme of something. And, everyone does. And it's just like this almost illusion of what you think you are and what you want. And then you find out that a lot of things are just giving you confidence anyways. They're giving you the right way to be yourself. And sometimes the fans of these things enjoy it because it lets them live in a different reality without, doing it in real life. But that's a little bit different subject matter, But yeah, I believe that I am, and I know that I am, because it's just a word to describe it, really. But that's what that is, and I really believe that my potential is a lot different than other people's. I believe that I have a lot more than them. And, you might get a lot of hate. And that's the thing is, you got to change that hate around. You got to change people, and you got to convince them. And that's what I'm saying. Being professional is different. Just because you're a natural born doesn't mean, because you got to get the marketing right. You got to control yourself, and that's a whole different thing. That's different than being a natural born comedian. That's separate from being like a funny person. That's like marketing. That's business. That's doing all of these things, making yourself look good. Making sure you say all the right things. You really have to, and it's work. And that's what I'm saying. People don't want to work at these other aspects of it because they're not good at the other angles. So you might be a natural born comedian, but you might not be good on the other angles. And that's why they say, oh, you need a manager and this shit. And, nowadays, just like you just do whatever the fuck you want. You could just, anybody could just post their shit up and be independent. You don't really need anybody unless you're trying to get into movies and shit. But movies can be a lot different than the internet stuff you do. But if you do both, it's just it's really complicated, and I wasn't really trying to talk about it in this particular segment. But yeah, natural born comedian. I just wanted to talk about it. Have a nice day. Have a nice